It all starts when this woman, Helen, shows up at the Tungton shelter soaking wet. She has a little kid by her side and is basically begging for a place to crash. The owner takes one look at them and flatly goes, "Sorry, we're full." But Helen has been around long enough to know exactly what this greedy bastard actually means by that. So, she pulls out a single silver coin and slides it across the counter. I swear, this man's whole personality does a 180 on the spot. Suddenly there's plenty of room. He shows them to their quarters, says he'll go over the rules and fees tomorrow, and dips. The second they're alone, Helen turns to look at the boy, Rowan. Just from the way her eyes land on him, you can tell this woman is carrying something absolutely devastating. The kid looks up at her with these big, innocent eyes and asks where his mom and dad are. Helen knows. She knows exactly what happened to them, and it's so horrific that she physically cannot get the words out. So, she does what any exhausted, heartbroken adult does when a kid asks something they're nowhere near ready to answer. She lies. She tells him he'll see them soon, that everything's okay, and to just go to sleep. The kid believes every word and is out cold within minutes. And then, Helen starts coughing. This isn't a little throat tickle situation. We're talking blood. This woman has been running on absolute fumes this entire journey, held together by sheer willpower. Now that the kid is safe and asleep, her body finally lets go. She looks at him one last time, whispers her goodbye, and that's it. Gone. Dead in that room before morning even shows up. Rowan wakes up in the middle of the night and immediately knows something is wrong. The sheets are soaked red, and Helen is just completely still. The shelter owner shows up with his mistress after hearing the commotion. Instead of having literally any normal human reaction to a woman dying in their building, these two are mostly just annoyed about the inconvenience. But then the mistress gets this look on her face. She's staring hard at Rowan, specifically at his light-colored hair, and goes, doesn't he look just like Pauline? Right on cue, Pauline walks in, same hair, same features. These two could genuinely pass for mother and son without anyone questioning it for a second. So, this conniving woman hatches a plan on the spot and tells Pauline, "Congratulations, he's your responsibility now." Now, there is something you should know about the Tungton shelter. On paper, it's a wholesome, charitable organization funded by donations and government money, providing warm beds for people with nowhere to go. Very noble, very heartwarming. In reality, it's a straight-up money-squeezing machine that preys on desperate people, especially kids, under the cover of responsibility fees. So Pauline and Rowan, this brand-new fake mother-son duo, are sent out to beg on the streets every day just to pay for the privilege of sleeping there. Pauline introduces herself and asks the boy his name. He says nothing. Mentally, he's still back in that room, still seeing those bloody sheets, and still trying to process the fact that yet another person in his life has just vanished. Pauline takes one look at his face and gets it immediately. She sits down next to him and just starts talking. She tells him she doesn't know everything he's been through, but the past is behind him now. What matters is what comes next. She tells him to stay positive, keep pushing, and that happiness will find its way to him eventually. Then she holds out her hand. Rowan takes it without hesitating. He plays the role of her son. They work the streets together, and what started as pure survival slowly turns into something completely real. Pauline keeps the bullies away, stands between him and every piece of ugliness the streets have to offer, and makes sure that even on the absolute worst days, he never feels truly alone. 5 years fly by just like that. Rowan is 8 now, and the two of them are sitting together one evening, reflecting on everything. The long days, the grind, and how far they've actually come. But Rowan caught a rumor that morning that had been sitting heavy in his chest all day. He asks her about it, still smiling, trying to play it cool. She nods and tells him how a noble household offered her a real maid position, actual pay, an actual roof, and an actual future. Rowan tells her he's happy for her, that she's going to be amazing, and he means every single word. But even as he's saying it, his eyes are already snitching on him. Before he can do anything about it, the tears are just coming down. First his parents, then Helen, and now Pauline. Everyone he's ever loved has left, and even though this time it's for something genuinely good, his heart doesn't really know how to tell the difference between being left for a reason and just being left. Pauline sees all of it written across his face and pulls him in close. Then she tells him something he's going to carry for the rest of his life. Being alone isn't about who's physically standing next to you. You're only truly alone if your heart feels empty. But as long as you hold on to the people you love, keep their memory alive, and feel how much they cared about you, they never actually leave. So whenever the loneliness starts creeping in, she says, "Just close your eyes, Put your hand over your heart and listen. I'll be right there." Cut to hours later, Pauline is gone, and now our boy is standing alone deep in the woods at night, turning her words over in his head. He does exactly what she told him. Eyes closed, hand over his heart, just listening. And then something insane happens. Mana starts swirling around him out of nowhere. His eyes are still shut, but suddenly he can see, not just the trees in the dark, but everything. It's like the whole world just went transparent all at once. And somewhere inside that vision, he feels them. His parents, Helen, Pauline, every single person he ever loved, burning bright and close, like they'd been living inside him the whole time, just waiting for him to finally look. Years roll by after Pauline leaves, and Rowan hasn't heard a single word from her. He tells himself she's probably just swamped, adjusting to noble household life. New job, new rules, new everything. He prays she's doing okay and leaves it at that. What else is he supposed to do? In the meantime, he's back to what he knows. Begging solo now, just like every other kid at Tungton. But Rowan is good at this. Uncomfortably good. The director notices pretty early on that this kid pulls in more coin than literally anyone else in the operation. So, he gets bumped up to Zone 1, prime real estate. It's got the best foot traffic and serves as the shelter's version of a corner office, better spot, better treatment. That's where he meets Blake. Blake runs Zone 1. The second he hears about Rowan's background, the dead parents, Helen, all of it, he takes the kid under his wing. Blake is warm, always shows up at the right moment, and has zero ulterior motives as far as Rowan can tell. Blake is also the guy who finally puts a name to what Rowan has been seeing since that night in the woods. Those swirling clusters of light weren't him losing his mind, they were mana. Well, I'm certain you guys already know what mana is, so I'm going to skip past the boring details. The scene shifts, and our boy is sitting at his usual spot with his bucket in front of him, doing his thing. Passers-by toss coins, and he thanks them with this genuine warmth. It's not that fake, performative beggar gratitude, but the real kind that actually makes people feel good about themselves. A group of ladies walks past and immediately cannot handle how adorable this child is. Coins absolutely rain into that bucket. But Rowan is only half present. The other half of his brain is quietly running experiments. He's been working on something, trying to see both the physical world and the mana flowing through it at the same time, like keeping two completely different lenses focused simultaneously. It's the kind of thing that gives you a headache just thinking about it. But today, something clicks. He manages it. Both layers are crystal clear at once. He lets himself have exactly one small smile about it because it genuinely was hard. The downside hits immediately, though. Holding both views at once leaves him dizzy and drained. Baby steps. Blake swings by, clocks the absolutely overflowing bucket, and raises an eyebrow. Rowan deflects with the humble beggar routine. It's really everyone else's generosity, not me. Blake doesn't fully buy it, but he appreciates the attitude. He drops a warning before leaving. Success breeds jealousy. So if anything feels off, anything at all, Rowan should come to him immediately. With one last wave, he's gone. Here's the thing, though. Something has already felt off, and Rowan didn't say a single word about it. Yesterday, he spotted two men in the crowd. There was nothing remarkable about how they looked, but their mana was impossibly bright and clean. It was condensed to the same degree as Blake's, but somehow even more intense. And they were watching him, and then just vanished. Not by walking away, but by jumping clean over buildings, gone between one blink and the next. Rowan turns this over in his head. They don't feel exactly threatening, but they definitely aren't random. He decides to keep both the sighting and his mana-vision ability to himself for now. Information is basically the only leverage a homeless 8-year-old has. He's not giving it away for free. His bucket's full, so he packs up and heads back to base camp for a replacement. It's a routine walk. It should be nothing, except halfway down the street he sees them again. Not just two this time. There are several of them spread out, positioned in the shadows, and this time they aren't hanging back. They're moving with him. They're closing the distance, one behind him, one flanking his side, coordinated enough to make it crystal clear that this is no coincidence. Rowan is 8 years old, completely alone and being tailed by multiple highly capable mana users down a city street. His pulse kicks into overdrive. His thoughts start fragmenting. All he has to do is make it to base camp, just get there. The entrance is close. He just has to... And then he hears a familiar voice. Blake comes flying in. This man is moving at speeds that have no business being legal. Covering ground like physics is more of a loose suggestion to him. He scoops Rowan up without breaking stride, launches off the ground, and suddenly they're on a rooftop. Then the next one, then the next. The men below are keeping up, because of course they are. So Blake cranks it up another gear and shouts at Rowan over the wind to hold on tight and, critically, not to drop a single coin because they need to eat tonight. Rowan doesn't respond. Blake glances down, expecting a completely terrified kid. Instead, Rowan has this totally vacant 1,000-yard stare going on. Blake figures he's gone catatonic from fear, gets them back to the shelter, sets him down and talks him through it. "You're safe. It's okay. Go inside." Rowan walks inside. Blake watches, mildly confused. But Rowan isn't frozen from fear at all. His brain has just detonated. The entire chase, being thrown through the air, watching Blake move at full power, had just handed him something absolutely priceless. For the first time ever, he could see exactly how mana flows through a human body during movement. Not theoretically, visually. He watched it happen in real time, how condensed mana surges into the legs before a jump, how it floods the arms when strength is needed, and exactly how many precise bursts it actually takes to clear a rooftop gap. He counted them. He cataloged every single one. So now, alone and safe inside, he decides to test whether he actually understood what he just saw. He breathes in, draws the mana from the air, and begins circulating it through his body, feeling where it flows naturally and where it pushes back. Then he starts to condense it, pulling it tight, getting it ready. And folks, this little boy wasn't supposed to try any of this yet, but this is how you know he's the real deal. Now that our boy has the basics down, it only makes sense that he's dying to try it out. But before he can do anything, all the other beggar kids start trickling back into the shelter, completely clueless about why they got called in early. Then Rowan Sr. shows up and basically tells everyone to chill. It's nothing serious, just some zone leaders doing an inspection. He tells them to wait in their rooms and stay quiet. But there's one exception, Rowan. Him specifically. They tell him to pack his bags because he's getting relocated. So the quiet little dude follows his senior through the shelter, walking a few steps behind like he always does. Suddenly his senior stops to have a private conversation with this big guy. Rowan's too far away to hear anything, but then he gets an idea. What if he pushed his mana into his ears? He tries it, and boom, it actually works. He gets crystal clear audio from across the room, like he just popped in AirPods. Turns out they're talking about him. Apparently he's getting moved out of the dorms and into the main building. Even his own senior has no idea why, but his best guess is that the director just likes the kid. And honestly, can you blame him? The dude is apparently pretty good looking for a shelter boy. Plus, after everything that went down in Zone 1 with those sketchy guys tailing him, it makes sense to keep him somewhere safer. His senior thinks those men might have been from something called the Union. We don't know what that is yet, but the way they say it, it's clearly a big deal. Rowan connects the dots immediately. Those were the guys following him earlier today. The big guy waves Rowan over, and they head deeper into the main building until they reach a woman named Amy standing at the front counter. The big guy basically goes, "This is your person now, say hi," and then dips. Cue the awkward silence. Amy breaks it by asking how old he is. Rowan says he's 10. Then he casually drops that he can't read or write and never had the chance to learn. Amy's not even surprised. She just goes, "Yeah, figured you're from the dorms." She tells him that starting tomorrow she's teaching him everything, so he can call her teacher or big sister if they're keeping it casual. Then she looks at him properly for the first time and goes, "Damn, you're actually really handsome for a dorm kid." Man, this is unfair. This little kid is ringing up baddies left and right. Rowan, completely unbothered, just asks, "Why do I even need to learn to read?" Amy is a little annoyed he doesn't already know why he's there, but she explains it. Reading events are basically these fancy gatherings, sometimes hosted by authors, sometimes by nobles, where a kid reads aloud to a crowd of important people. It's a massive deal in upper-class circles, and this time Rowan's going to be performing at one of the shelter's big patron events. If he does well, he might even get picked for a private reading. And private readings are basically the fast track to getting adopted. Sponsors pick their favorites that way. For a kid who literally cannot read at all right now, though, yeah, no pressure. After this entire info dump, Rowan just stands there. Bro has absolutely no reaction. Amy genuinely doesn't know what to make of him, but she gives him a little pat on the head anyway and tells him to follow her. She shows him his new room and introduces him to the other kids. When she leaves, Rowan starts unpacking into his very own personal closet, something he's never had in his life. Right then, one of the boys walks up, looking at him like he just saw a unicorn. He's genuinely shocked that this dude came from the dorms, but he's fascinated too. He introduces himself as Theo and goes down the lineup. The blonde girl is Noah, the middle kid is Hayden, and the quiet girl off to the side is Lily. Theo gives him the welcome speech. No bullying here, no more begging on the streets. The kids in this room handle the library, organizing books, helping guests, and keeping things running. And now that Rowan's part of the crew, they're genuinely happy to have him. Later that night, Rowan's lying in bed and his brain just won't shut off. He keeps thinking about books, about how every single thing anyone could ever want to know is probably sitting somewhere in a book. He thinks about Pauline, who always said books were the best thing you could give a curious kid. Just thinking about her fills him with this quiet, deep gratitude. Cut to the library zone 1. Rowan has been grinding through his reading practice, and Amy tells him to bring over everything he read that day. He drops this massive stack of books on the table, and she starts writing down all the titles. Then she stops and looks up. Every single book on this list is a fairy tale. She tells him to move on to Zone 2, the adult section, and throws in some genuine praise for how fast he's picking this up. Rowan is hyped. Zone 2, adult books. He practically speed walks over there. He starts browsing the shelves, and honestly, every book looks interesting. He wants to read all of them immediately. But then one title stops him cold. The Birth of the Grafton Kingdom and the Union. The Union. He's heard that word before from adults in hushed tones. He opens it up, and the first thing he sees is a full map of the continent. Apparently, a region called Grafton won some massive war a long time ago. After that, the whole world got restructured. 1 kingdom, 6 self-governing regions. Then, to make sure no one ever went to war again, the king created this organization called the Union. They've been running for over 200 years as peacekeepers, the good guys, supposedly. So now Rowan's confused. If the Union are the good guys, why did Blake run from them like his life depended on it? His first theory, maybe the Union cracks down on begging, and Blake was scared of getting in trouble. But that doesn't track, because Blake had a totally normal relationship with the local supervisors. That theory is dead. Then a darker thought creeps in. What if the shelter and the Union aren't on good terms? He's also incredibly curious as to why the shelter is keeping the events of that day a total secret. So, a few days go by, and Rowan has actually settled into his new routine pretty smoothly. His whole routine is basically showing up to the library, doing some light cleaning, and sneakily using mana to make all the physical work a little easier on himself. Now, here's the thing. Back when he was living on the streets, using mana required him to sit completely still, like he was meditating for his life. But now, the dude is casually circulating mana while walking around and reading at the same time. That is a massive glow-up. The only issue is that his mana keeps scattering instead of actually gathering like it's supposed to. It's annoying, but Rowan is not the type to lose sleep over it. One step at a time. Then one day, all the kids get rounded up in the main hallway. The vice director and Amy are up front, and skipping any small talk, the vice director starts reading off names for the next reading event. Theo, Lily, and Noah are all in. Cool. But when she hits Rowan's name, she actually pauses. Let's be real, this kid just finished the fairy tale section, so putting him in front of important guests feels like a stretch. But then she actually looks at him and thinks, okay, yeah, this boy is genuinely too pretty to leave in the back. His face alone would elevate the entire event. So instead of having him read, she tells him he'll just be observing this time, taking in the atmosphere, learning the vibe. The kids who didn't make the cut at all are side-eyeing him hard, muttering about how it's unfair that the new guy who barely finished fairy tales got a spot just because of his face. Come event day, Rowan shows up in his nice clothes, and the whole room does a double take. Theo immediately hits him with a compliment, Rowan returns the favor, and then Amy walks him to his assigned seat. Once everyone is settled, there's a knock at the door, and the very important guests start filing in. And then one of those guests stops dead in her tracks. She recognizes him. This woman had seen Rowan before, back when he was out on the streets begging in the cold. Even then, she'd been completely taken by how striking he looked for a beggar kid. Rowan recognizes her too, and wastes no time thanking her for the money she'd given him back then. Her name is Caroline, and she is basically his #1 fan before she even walks through the door. She immediately starts gushing to the vice director, going on about how she'd spotted this beautiful boy at an intersection last winter, and now, here he is, somehow looking even better than before. When the vice director casually mentions that Rowan has also just learned to read, Caroline loses it. She demands he read something today, right now. The vice director tries to explain that he is only there to observe. Caroline is visibly disappointed, but seeing how hyped the other guests are getting, the vice director caves and tells Rowan to read the last chapter. What happens next, nobody is really prepared for. The second Rowan opens his mouth, the whole room goes dead quiet. His voice has this rhythm to it, smooth, warm, almost hypnotic. The women in the audience are done for. Eyes are getting watery, lips are being bitten, hearts are beating a little faster than normal. By the time he finishes the passage, the room basically erupts with compliments. Every sweet word you can think of, these women are throwing at him. And Rowan? He stays perfectly humble. He redirects all the credit to the vice director, saying none of it would have been possible without her, which naturally makes the women love him even more. Caroline immediately declares she is coming back tomorrow to hear him read again, and the vice director says yes without even blinking. Later that day, Rowan is back in the library doing his thing, browsing the shelves, but this time he is specifically hunting for books about combining mana with physical movement. He's deep in the search when Blake creeps up behind him. Blake glances at the book in Rowan's hands and raises an eyebrow, because the book Rowan blindly grabbed happens to be about life's pleasures. Rowan spins around and puts on this exaggerated, startled reaction like Blake just scared the life out of him. He didn't, though. Rowan had sensed him coming from a mile away. Blake had stopped by to give him props for the reading event. Word had gotten around fast, and Blake is genuinely bummed he missed it. Rowan tells him not to sweat it. He knows Blake is out here handling actual responsibilities. Then Rowan asks if there's any update on the union situation. Blake says, yeah, those guys are causing trouble again, but he's planning to deal with them alongside the administrators. Rowan immediately tells him he's got full confidence in him. Those union guys are going to get exactly what's coming to them. Honestly, that hits different coming from Rowan. The kid just has that effect on people, and Blake feels it. Blake mentions he probably won't make it to tomorrow's reading either, which is a bummer. Rowan tells him not to stress, as there will be plenty more chances. Then Rowan says something that catches Blake a little off guard. He says he's more worried about Blake's safety than anything else, and tells him to be careful out there. Blake wishes him luck back. On his way out, he points at the book still in Rowan's hands and tells him he should definitely read that one, after the reading sessions, of course. Then he's gone. Rowan stands there alone in the quiet library, just thinking. He's genuinely curious what a fight between two people who have actually mastered mana control would look like. But more than that, he wants to know where he stands right now. What is his actual level? Could he even begin to compare to someone like Blake? He starts running mana through his body just to get a feel for it, and then accidentally rips the book clean in half. The mana had surged straight into his grip and cranked his strength way up with zero warning. Rowan looks down at the two halves of the book in his hands and goes, well, that answers that. Question. Cut to Rowan getting summoned to the vice director's office. He walks in with zero clue what's about to happen. The vice director is sitting there, clearly struggling to figure out how to even start the conversation. Then it all comes out. Turns out our boy has completely cooked every other reader into irrelevance. Every single noblewoman who has attended one of his sessions now refuses to listen to anyone else. These women have been hounding the vice director so hard she is literally growing stress gray hairs in real time. So now she's in the incredibly awkward position of having to sit across from a kid and basically beg him to carry her entire business on his back. Rowan doesn't even flinch. He doesn't negotiate. He doesn't ask for anything. He just looks at her and goes, sure, I'll do it. But then comes the twist. The vice director walks out and makes the big, special reader announcement, and everyone is already mentally filling in Rowan's name. Instead, she calls Theo. The whole room does a hard freeze. Theo himself starts stuttering because he genuinely cannot process that he got picked. The vice director congratulates him and sends him off. Even sweet, humble Theo pulls Rowan aside before he leaves and goes, bro, your reading is on a completely different level. You're going somewhere incredible. It's genuinely wholesome, but it also kind of just confirms that everybody in the building knows exactly what's happening here. Rowan watches him walk off and feels this little pang in his chest. It isn't jealousy, it's more like he's just going to miss the guy. But that feeling gets about 30 seconds of airtime before Rowan is right back in the reading room, absolutely demolishing these noble women with his voice again. Speaking of shifts, the vice director pulls him aside again to break the news that he's now on double duty, morning and afternoon sessions. She clearly feels bad about it. You can see it on her face, but the demand has gotten completely out of hand. Now, any other person would start negotiating, or at least complaining a little. Rowan sees it as an opportunity. He genuinely feels grateful that people want to hear him that badly. The only thing he asks for is short breaks between sessions, because the emotional output drains him every single time. The vice director, who physically cannot say no to this kid, agrees immediately and just tells him not to wander past the backyard. Rowan takes the win and heads outside. The second he gets some peace and quiet, he's straight back to his mana experiments. He runs through everything he read in that book, starting with focusing mana on specific spots, muscles, joints, and bones, and then slowly letting it spread through his whole body like a current. And here's the key thing he unlocks: mana doesn't respond to passive thought. It needs a direct command behind it. Actual willpower, not just a polite suggestion. When he gets the execution right, his whole body lights up. When it fades, he still keeps hitting this wall with his concentration, and he's not sure yet whether the problem is his technique or something deeper with his body. But he isn't rushing it. He'd rather build the foundation right than burn himself out the way he's watched everyone else do. That thought pulls him back to the memory of Blake literally having to carry him to the shelter because his legs gave out completely. He figures the Union guys probably got sick of chasing him at some point, which is at least one less problem on his plate. But something else has been quietly nagging at him. He's noticed that even people who are actually skilled with mana can drain themselves completely if they push too hard. That gets his brain going. What if there's a way to tap into stored mana, or, better yet, pull from the ambient mana already floating around in the environment and use it like it's your own? And then it hits him. He's already kind of been doing exactly that. When he channels mana into his voice and projects it outward, that's essentially the same mechanic. If he can figure out how to shape external mana the same way he shapes his own, the ceiling on what he can do is basically gone. He keeps poking at the theory out in the garden, and then, light bulb moment. A single leaf lifts off the ground and just hovers in the air. It's just floating there, suspended, doing absolutely nothing, and somehow it is the most incredible thing Rowan's ever seen. Our boy just invented something. Cut to the next special reader announcement. This time it's Lily. Everyone applauds. The vice director does her usual send-off, a standard routine, except Lily isn't moving. She's standing there completely flustered, staring at Rowan, visibly trying to summon the courage to say literally anything. She starts stuttering, and it becomes very, very obvious this girl is about to confess her feelings. But before she can get a single coherent word out, the other kids in the room start talking loudly over everything. They're going off about how baffled they are that Rowan got passed over again. Because at this point, they've all done the math. The man is a cash cow. The vice director knows it, and she's keeping him here on purpose. The whole room explodes in chatter, and Lily's entire moment just gets steamrolled into nothing. Rowan, noticing she had said something, turns to her and asks her to repeat it. Lily, who has completely lost her window, just walks away crying. Meanwhile, Rowan has already mentally moved on because his brain is doing what it always does, sprinting off somewhere else entirely. He's thinking about how every special reader ends up placed with a good family. That means leaving the shelter, experiencing new environments, meeting new people, and, more than anything, getting more exposure to the world. More chances to learn. More data on mana storage. The curiosity is genuinely eating at him now. The next day at break time, he's back in the garden doing the leaf levitation trick again, and it's noticeably easier this time. The practice is working. Then, completely out of nowhere, he picks up on a purple mana trail nearby and spots a man trying to slip onto the shelter grounds. Rowan recognizes him. It's the big guy who first brought him to the main building way back when. And then, the big guy just drops. His mana flickers out like a candle. Another man rushes over immediately, and the two of them start talking in urgent, hushed voices. Rowan catches just enough to make out one word, Union. Before he can even begin to process what he just witnessed, someone quietly tells him to go back inside, act completely normal, and pretend he saw nothing. Rowan walks back in, still half frozen, running through what just happened and coming up with absolutely no answers. Then, things get stranger. The afternoon reading session gets canceled, and all the kids are told to go straight to their rooms. Everyone is confused, wondering what the hell is going on. Before anyone can figure anything out, Amy comes to find our boy and tells him to pack his stuff, because he is the special reader today. We cut back to Rowan getting ready, and already, something feels off. Amy's entire energy has done a complete 180. That warm, familiar vibe she usually has with him has evaporated. She's cold, flat, and serious. It's putting him on edge in a way he can't quite shake. He's also still turning over those two guys from earlier in his head, along with the whole Union mention. His gut is screaming that all of it is connected to why the afternoon session got canceled without so much as an explanation. He heads out and finds Amy already waiting, dressed up and ready to go. With zero small talk, she glances at his outfit. There's this tiny flicker across her face, like she almost wanted to say something, but then she just tells him to follow her and starts walking. Rowan asks if he's being taken to Caroline, which honestly would have been the best-case scenario. Amy doesn't answer. She just walks. Somehow that's worse than a no. They don't go anywhere he recognizes. Instead, they head towards something called the Annex, a completely separate relief shelter. The moment Rowan lays eyes on it, his whole body goes stiff. The place is dark, oppressive, and radiating pure bad vibes. And it's not just a feeling either. He can actually sense it. The mana inside that building is wrong. Everyone in there is carrying something heavy, something suspicious. The big guy escorts him in like time is a serious concern. Rowan steals one last look at Amy's face before they step through the door, and he immediately senses that something is off. Yep, this place is sus as hell. There are no windows and it's darker than expected. Rowan makes a quiet decision right then and there. He is not dropping his guard for a single second. He immediately activates his mana sense. Then, he hears the vice director's voice somewhere deeper in the building. They walk him into this hall that looks less like a room and more like a ritual altar. Before he can even get a read on the situation, he's told to sit down and read. Rowan clocks the specific book they want him to read from, and then his eyes drift to the massive pit in the center of the room. It's this deep, dark hole that descends way further down than it has any business doing. He stares at it, and then it hits him. That's not just a pit. That thing is absolutely loaded with mana, more than he's ever felt concentrated in one place. Dark mana. He starts reading anyway. The passage is poetic, atmospheric, the kind of text that perfectly matches the suffocating energy of the room, and as the words leave his mouth, he can feel it. The dark mana in the pit is responding, gathering and pulling toward him. The emotion slams into him like a wave, totally uncontrollable, and his whole reading style shifts darker without him even trying. But then the second realization hits him, and this one is a problem. The pit isn't feeding him, he's feeding the pit. His mana is getting drained with every single word, his body getting weaker sentence by sentence. He can't stop though, and he knows it. If he stops now, the shelter gets exposed, and the Union moves in. So he endures it, and immediately starts building a plan, absorb the external mana around him and redirect the flow to protect himself. And it actually works. Now our boy is in full control. He even feels a little relief wash over him. Now he can keep reading without getting drained, and he can use his mana detection the second any Union members show up. So, he buys time on purpose, dragging the reading out. The people who set this whole thing up are getting antsy though. The ritual should have wrapped by now. They decide someone needs to go check on what's taking so long. Rowan already knows they're coming, but then something completely unexpected happens. Instead of coming toward him, the shelter people burst into the room and go underground, straight into the pit. Rowan watches them disappear below and thinks, what the hell is actually being fed down there? The scene cuts to the housemaster getting slapped clean across the face. The vice director grabs him. The guy running the ritual is furious, convinced they tried to bail on the whole operation. Meanwhile, our boy drops down into the pit, and his entire world cracks open right there. Real people were sacrificed for this ritual. He's still trying to process that horror when he spots a familiar face among them, Pauline. Then the angry guy from before clocks Rowan standing there. At the exact same time, Blake comes storming in, demanding answers. He asks why the director and vice director are dead. This bastard replies that he killed them because they tried to run. That's when they found a strange fruit on the tree. Rowan was brought here to create one more fruit, but the process failed, and nobody knows why. Blake looks frustrated, processing all of it. And then, he pulls his sword out of Pauline's body. Meanwhile, our boy is standing there completely still, like a statue, because now he remembers. He'd asked Blake once why he never carried a sword. Blake had told him his weapon was being used somewhere else. And it is now that this bastard realizes what just went down. Bro completely loses it. He goes full-on mob psycho, 100% absolute rage. Now that our boy has snapped, he makes his first right decision so far and absolutely murders the guy standing next to him. And then, he starts walking toward Blake. And this idiot finally realizes that he has massively miscalculated, because this 10-year-old is radiating a terrifying dark aura that makes absolutely no sense for someone his age. Blake doesn't even get to finish his little villain monologue before Rowan blitzes him with a speed and force that has absolutely no business coming from a child. But then, the fight just stops for a second. Rowan's attention snaps to the tree, the dead, horrible, cursed tree, and he just starts crying. He absolutely loses it. He pushes his own mana into the tree and dives into the memories trapped inside it. What he sees is brutal, terrified children, helpless people, all of them gone. And then, buried in all that horror, he sees something unexpected, an older version of himself, a fully grown Rowan staring back at him. Before he can process any of that, the memory sequence cuts off. Rowan is yanked back out, left with more questions than answers. But something has shifted inside him. It feels like he reconnected with a woman he thought he'd lost forever. Riding along with that feeling is Pauline's voice. He remembers what she told him, that he's only truly alone when his heart is empty, that as long as he holds on to the people he loved, they never really leave. Love isn't something you can see, it's something you feel. Even if the memories themselves fade, the love stays. It lives in his heart permanently. And then, just like that, he's back. Blake has a sword pressed to his throat. This smug bastard tells Rowan that he was kind enough to wait while the boy had his little emotional moment, and adds that he always knew Rowan was sharp. Sure, his subordinates messed up the original plan, but now he's curious. So he gives the kid a choice: come with him or die quietly right here, right now. Rowan, who has already decided in his head that this bastard is dying, asks where they'd be going. Blake explains there's another farm, another tree. Rowan would tend to it, Blake would manage him, and he'd officially be welcomed into the Lutel. Now, if you're wondering what the Lutel is, it's basically a cult run by some fanatic who thinks dark magic is the key to changing the world. Blake is just an errand boy for this guy, a loyal little servant. That's when Rowan asks a question in the coldest possible tone, his eyes completely empty. Was Blake the one who built the tree? Blake says no, he doesn't have that kind of power, that's high priest work. He just observes. Anyway, Blake is done talking. He wants an answer. Like, bro, did you really need to ask that? You killed the woman who was basically his mom. So, obviously, Rowan hits him with a hard no, and this bastard doesn't waste a single second. He goes straight for the kill. I want you to really sit with this for a second. This is the same man who treated Rowan like a little brother. I personally expected at least a moment of hesitation, but no. He genuinely tries to kill this child without blinking. Except, Rowan catches the blade with 2 fingers. He uses external mana control so precise it makes Blake's brain short-circuit. Then, Rowan quietly asks if Blake was the one who killed Pauline. Blake, still somehow being arrogant about this, asks if Rowan wants revenge. Rowan just snaps the sword in half and tells him he won't live to see tomorrow. Look, that line is cold on its own, but it hits different when you remember this is a grieving 10-year-old who just lost the closest thing he had to a mother. Then, our boy hits him with a magical sucker punch, putting the bastard on the ground. Without another word, Rowan cuts him in 2. Now that he's finally done, his senses tingle. He picks up a group incoming. Sure enough, a whole squad comes rolling in, ready to sweep the area and presumably judge everything they find. Leading the pack is Oscar, vice captain of the Union's Faith Division. He spots Rowan immediately and cuts straight to it. Is this kid using telekinesis? Rowan blinks like he just asked something deeply personal. Oscar rephrases. Did the Lutel teach him? You know, the magic stuff. Rowan says no, he figured it out himself. Oscar almost chokes, because that is genuinely the most unhinged thing he's ever heard come out of a child's mouth. And he has heard things. But the kid isn't lying. Oscar can tell, which makes it so much worse. They get to talking, and Rowan proceeds to absolutely work Oscar over. He clocks his rank just from his badge. He casually drops knowledge about the Faith Division's recon operations. Then, he shows off his telekinetic abilities, and one of Oscar's subordinates visibly has to collect themselves because they were not prepared for that. One of his men pulls Oscar aside to whisper that the tree was grown less than 2 years ago, and the binding spell has been undone. Oscar notes that any high priest would have left mana traces behind, unless it was Father Scion. Meanwhile, Rowan is just staring at the tree and at Lily, quietly marinating in the guilt of not being kinder to her when he had the chance. He asks Oscar how many trees like this he's come across on his missions, essentially asking, how deep does this go? How big is this thing? Oscar answers, but he's watching Rowan the whole time. A normal kid in this situation would be losing it, crying, shaking, completely coming apart at the seams, but this one is different. He's focused, controlled, and already knows what he wants to do next. Rowan asks to join the Faith Division. Oscar figures the kid is in shock and just incredibly good at hiding it, better than most adults, honestly. He tells him they'll run a special investigation first before anything gets decided, and tells him to follow. As Rowan walks away from it all, the tree, the bodies, the whole grim scene, his eye catches something on the dead vice director's body. A single coin just sitting there unclaimed. He pockets it without breaking stride. Cut to outside the building. One of Oscar's guys is giving the official damage report, and here's the gist. The Faith Division came out totally unscathed. As for the body count, there are 13 dead from the cult side and 3 from the shelter. They've narrowed the suspects down to 2 people, and one of them is apparently Amy. Oh, and the high priests and the big shots of the Lutel group? Turns out they only set up the ritual space, they didn't actually break it. The investigation is still ongoing because nobody can figure out how the whole thing collapsed in the first place. With the report done, Oscar turns to Rowan and asks where the kid feels most comfortable. Rowan says the library, and because Oscar is actually a decent human being, he's like, "Alright, library it is. Lead the way." In the next scene, they're both sitting in the library having a proper conversation. Oscar kicks things off by pointing out that even here, surrounded by books, there isn't a single one about mana cultivation. He is dying to know how exactly this kid taught himself magic. Rowan is basically like, "I'm smart, I just figured it out." Seeing that confidence, even Oscar, a grown adult professional, has to admit that yeah, this kid is probably telling the truth and yeah, he's probably incredibly gifted. Still, he needs to hear Rowan's full account of everything that went down. So, Rowan walks him through it all, starting from the very first moment he arrived at the shelter, all the way to his conclusion that Pauline was most likely the one who passed her abilities on to him. After hearing the whole story, Oscar is still sitting there with a ton of questions because nothing about this kid adds up. Rowan has 0 mana training. 0. Yet he managed to kill 2 members of the Lutel organization, one of whom was Blake, a skilled swordsman. Not only that, but he also somehow shattered a high priest's ritual, which is not something you just stumble into doing. On top of all that, the kid is using telekinesis without saying a single magic word, which apparently isn't normal. And to cap it all off, he doesn't even look tired. This boy just casually rewrote the rules of magic and didn't even break a sweat. Rowan, meanwhile, is curious about the tree and wants to know what it actually was. Oscar gives him the full breakdown in simple terms. It's a ritual device created by the Lutel specifically to harvest human life. The whole point is to produce a fruit made from condensed life energy, basically solidified mana in physical form, which makes it insanely valuable on the black market. The fruit gets consumed, and whoever eats it gets a straight-up boost to their mana capacity. As for why reading was involved in the ritual, specific conditions have to be met to stabilize the tree and improve the fruit's quality. Reading aloud apparently does exactly that. Rowan immediately connects the dots. He remembers how the tree seemed engaged with his story, almost like it was listening. That's why it stabilized, the reading was working. And then he takes it a step further, realizing the darkest truth of all, before these things were trees, they were actual human beings. Oscar is genuinely impressed. That's exactly what he had concluded too, and this 10-year-old just got there entirely on his own. Then Rowan asks what telekinesis actually means, because he keeps hearing the word. Oscar explains it's a type of magic that lets you move objects using mana. Rowan demonstrates it right there, and it finally clicks for him. He's been using magic this whole time without even knowing it. The dude had absolutely no idea. Oscar notes that while it's still at a beginner level, the fact that a kid his age is pulling this off at all is remarkable. Then, Oscar remembers something. Rowan had mentioned wanting to join the Faith Division. After everything the boy just went through, being betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect him, Oscar genuinely wants to understand why. The Faith Division and the Union are essentially the same organization, just operating under different names, so joining them is not a small commitment. Rowan is honest about it. He doesn't fully trust the Faith Division yet, but his gut tells him Oscar is a good person. He can feel it in his mana. Oscar is a little thrown off hearing a 10-year-old describe him as pure, and he tells the kid that trusting people based on vibes alone could seriously get him killed someday. Rowan pushes back, saying he's good at reading people, but Oscar shuts it down gently. It's not that simple. Getting a child involved in their operations isn't something he can just greenlight. Rowan starts to wonder if he's too weak or too inexperienced, but Oscar stops him and tells him to listen carefully. In life, raw talent isn't everything. His tone goes dead serious and Rowan's mood drops immediately. Sulking mode activated. Oscar clarifies that there is nothing wrong with Rowan. The problem is that making exceptions for outsiders is complicated, and the kid is very young. Rowan, not missing a single beat, asks the obvious question, is age really more important than actual ability? That lands. Oscar pauses, because the honest answer is that Rowan did just take down 2 grown men. The talent is real, but the Union frustratingly measures experience by age, not skill. Oscar admits it. Rowan asks if that means he's too immature for them, and that's when Oscar decides to give the kid a real shot. He reframes the whole conversation as a practice interview and starts asking real questions. First one, why did Rowan kill Edgar? Edgar wasn't an immediate threat at the time. Rowan answers without hesitation. Edgar had already killed the shelter owner and his wife. The pattern was obvious. Hesitating would have just meant Rowan was next. Oscar acknowledges that point but pushes further. The boy still killed 2 people, emotions could have clouded his judgment. Rowan agrees that, yeah, his emotions were part of it and he's not ashamed of that. But he also argues that emotions don't always screw with your thinking. Sometimes they make things clearer. In his judgment, the men in front of him had taken multiple innocent lives. There was nothing to redeem, no reason to spare them. And if he had the power to deliver justice in that moment, that's exactly what he did. Oscar asks the big one, "Did you have the right to kill him?" Rowan says it was the fairest outcome given everything. He had the power, and he used it. But he's not hiding from it either. He knows he killed someone. He's not making excuses, he's just owning it. Oscar pushes one more time. Was it really necessary? And Rowan, without thinking for a second, says, "Yep, it was absolutely necessary. There are people whose entire job is carrying out executions." Then he looks Oscar dead in the eyes and says, "That's what the union does too." For a second, Oscar just stares at him, because the kid is right. He takes a moment to explain what the union truly stands for. Yes, they carry out justice, but at their core, their goal is a world full of happiness and laughter. A world that's safe, peaceful, and stable for every generation that comes after. It's an impossible ideal. They know they'll never fully reach it, but it's the goal they chase regardless. That's the union's real purpose. And the fact that Rowan, at 10 years old, somehow already gets that? Oscar is genuinely impressed. He tells Rowan about an organization called the Grave, a powerful, shadowy group threatening the entire kingdom. The cult they just dealt with is just one branch of it. The Union's 1st Division has been working to dismantle the Grave piece by piece, and Oscar believes that with Rowan's help they might actually be able to finish the job. Rowan is confused about where he fits in, so Oscar lays it out plainly. Rowan comes to the Union, proves himself, and earns his spot. Simple as that. Until then, Oscar just wants the kid to live up to his own potential. Meeting over. Outside, Oscar addresses his team. He announces that the Tungten Shelter's involvement in aiding the Grave has been confirmed and dealt with. The Union succeeded. The darkness in this area has been eliminated, and the shelter will return to normal operations. Then he gives the signal, and the division starts to move out. Before he goes, Oscar calls over this 10 out of 10 elf baddie, Sienna. She walks in, and our boy is immediately surprised because she's radiating waves of blue mana, like she's practically glowing. Oscar fills her in and tells her to get Rowan to the Union safely. Man, the mad luck this guy has makes grown men want to sell their soul, their grandmother, and their neighbor's cat just to swap places with a 10-year-old. Sienna introduces herself. Pillar of faith. 2-day journey. Pack anything important. She is all business, her tone sharp and practiced. Rowan has nothing to pack. She raises an eyebrow, gives him one last chance, and then opens it up for questions like she's daring him to waste her time. Rowan immediately asks about her race. Dark elf. Then, because he has absolutely no filter, he blurts out that he expected dark elves to have a much darker aura, because hers is bright, radiant even. Sienna looks at him the way you look at something you can't quite categorize. She tells him it's probably his bloodline affecting his perception and leaves it firmly at that. Oscar says his goodbyes, and in true Rowan fashion, the kid turns to the rest of the team and sincerely tells them to stay safe. The whole team goes quiet, like it's not the sort of thing these guys are used to hearing. The scene shifts, and Rowan and Sienna are setting up camp in the middle of nowhere. Then Sienna pulls out this little handcrafted sheath she's been working on in the background and hands it over to our boy. Rowan gets so emotional he immediately goes into full respectful mode, addressing her like she's actual royalty or something. Sienna's like, "Yeah, no, cut that out." But calling her big sister felt weird too. So, after thinking for a second, Rowan just settles on Sienna, since they're going to be working together anyway. It's such an awkward, wholesome solution that Sienna literally has to turn around to hide how much it got to her. A dark elf assassin, getting flustered by a kid. Then Rowan starts messing around with his telekinesis, making his broken blade spin in the air. Sienna is just watching like, what the hell even is this power? Rowan mentions the vice captain called it telekinetic magic. Sienna is like, yeah, sure, that's the closest thing we've got, but honestly, that word doesn't really do it justice. Rowan is confused, so she breaks it down. His magic is legitimately one of a kind. Most mages need to chant spells, draw magic circles, and do a whole song and dance just to touch mana. This kid? He just does it. No instructions, no training wheels, nothing. She tells him that kind of raw mana control is something only the ancient elves had. The OG elves from before the race split into dark elves. high elves, and all that. Then she looks him dead in the eyes and tells him that, just from his eye color alone, she knows his parents were absolutely not normal people. That one hits different. Rowan goes quiet thinking about them. The next day they show up to the Union. And, bro, this place is not what Rowan expected. It's basically an entire city. Sienna gives him the grand tour, explaining there's a residential district and a commercial district. But the real flex isn't the buildings, it's the people. Every single race on the continent comes here. The strongest warriors and mages in the world have literally set up shop here specifically to protect regular people from psychos like the Grave. That's why they call it the sword and book of the continent. It's got the muscle and the brains. Rowan is absorbing all of this like a sponge, eyes wide, mentally filing everything away. Then they get intercepted. This dude named Lazarus, director of the Union's management department, shows up and immediately locks onto Rowan. He pulls him aside for a private chat, and they end up in this room that is aggressively bright, almost suspiciously so. Rowan mentally flags that immediately because this kid notices everything. Now, Rowan already knows this place is where all the heavy hitters gather. But what really tips him off about Lazarus is his aura. It's not flashy or intimidating. It is perfectly controlled. Not a single drop of mana is wasted. And somehow that's way more impressive than any big showy display. Rowan starts quietly calculating just how strong this guy actually is. Then, Lazarus does something unexpected. He politely asks for Rowan's hand and holds it with both of his. The second he does, Rowan feels it. This man is doing the exact same mana control thing Rowan does, except on a completely different level. If Rowan's been drawing stick figures, this guy is out here painting the damn Sistine Chapel. Instead of being scared, Rowan is hyped. He didn't know other people could do this. He didn't know it could even go this far. The man is practically vibrating with excitement. Then Lazarus's eyes slide over to the coin hanging off Rowan, the one he took from the deputy director. Before the man can even ask, Rowan sets the record straight. He didn't steal it. It was his grandma's. He just took back what was already his. Lazarus asks to see the emblem on it. And here's where it gets interesting. He asks nicely, but Rowan's body just straight up doesn't move. He tries to pull his hand back. He tries to shift his weight. Nothing. Lazarus has basically stitched their mana together, locking him in place without making a single aggressive move. It's the most polite prison cell Rowan has ever been in. So Rowan thinks it through in real time. If I can handle the gravity pressure and the mana pressure at the same time, maybe I can slip out. He tries it, and he actually pulls it off. Lazarus looks genuinely impressed, but Rowan is already annoyed with himself because all he really did was copy the director's own technique back at him. Nothing original. Except Lazarus noticed that too, and he's even more impressed because of it. Lazarus examines the emblem, and for the first time his perfect mana control flickers just for a split second. Rowan catches it instantly. The director thanks him genuinely, not just out of politeness, but for showing him something he'd been wondering about for a long time. Rowan, still curious, just straight up asks, "Are you the strongest person in the Union?" Lazarus laughs and waves it off, calling himself just an old raccoon helping the next generation. Rowan takes that completely literally and misses the joke entirely, which is very on brand for him. But Lazarus answers honestly, "The 17 captains are terrifying. The commander above them is on another level entirely. And then there's the governor and the top brass above even that. Compared to those people, yeah." The raccoon checks out. Rowan asks if he can come back with more questions sometime. Lazarus tells him, "Sure, just book an appointment." As they wrap up, Rowan mentally files Lazarus under two categories, good and strong. High praise coming from this kid. He walks out feeling solid, like coming to the Union was definitely the right move. And then he sees his new home, the Union Academy. Sienna explains it's where Union members send their kids when they're away on long missions, which basically makes it a school full of kids who grew up in this life. It's not specialized. It covers swordsmanship, magic, martial arts, all of it. It builds students up from the ground up. The idea is that 5 years here could turn Rowan into something genuinely terrifying. The second she mentions school, something inside Rowan just lights up. Cut to the next day. Our boy is looking fresh in his new uniform, dripped out and ready to learn. He asks the woman if she's a teacher, and she's like, "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself properly." Turns out she's Daphne, the head of academic affairs and a language teacher. Basically, she's kind of a big deal. She hands him the first-year class schedule, which includes a list of elective subjects he can pick from. And bro, the options are stacked. Mana manipulation, swordsmanship, astronomy, all kinds of cool stuff. Our boy looks at this menu of knowledge, and his eyes light up. So what does he do? He checks every single box. When Daphne gets the paper back, her jaw hits the floor. She's like, "Kid, are you insane? This workload would break most students. If you fail even one of these classes, you're cooked." But our boy is just sitting there like, what's the problem? Because he genuinely doesn't understand why anyone would find studying difficult. Daphne is looking at him like he's an alien. What kind of child wants to study everything? Most kids would rather eat dirt than do homework, but this little psychopath is built different. She tries to warn him about the insane amount of homework he'll have, but he won't budge. Finally, she just gives up and accepts his list, probably thinking, you know what? Let him learn the hard way. She tells him to follow her to his first class. In the next scene, our boy walks into the classroom behind Daphne, and his eyes are darting everywhere, taking it all in. He immediately notices something important. Every kid in this room has way denser mana than he does. This confirms what he already suspected. His body is the problem, not his ability. Daphne introduces him as the late transfer student and gives him the floor. Rowan steps up to introduce himself, getting flashbacks to those reading sessions at the shelter. This feels familiar. He gives this polite, wholesome introduction about hoping to get along with everyone. And bro, his voice. This kid's voice is so smooth and sincere that it literally touches the teacher's heart. Look at this little bastard, already rizzing up the teacher. Once our boy takes his seat, the class begins. Daphne tells everyone to turn to page 24 and asks Rowan to read, since she knows he learned how back at the shelter. He opens the book and immediately recognizes it. It's the exact same book Amy used to test him with. His mind flashes back to the shelter, where he was reading beautifully with this elegant tone that had everyone mesmerized. But now he's feeling some type of way because Amy, the girl who taught him, turned out to be part of the Lutel group that betrayed him. Still, our boy is mature for his age. He's thinking maybe he should give her a chance to explain herself because he doesn't actually know her side of the story yet. In his head, he's like, people are way more complicated than textbooks, which is some deep stuff for a kid to be thinking. By the time he finishes reading the passage, the entire class erupts in applause. Even the teacher is gushing about how talented he is, praising the school for snagging such a gifted student. After class, some kids come up to him like, "Yo, you're insane. Daphne never gets impressed by students, but you had her shook." Our boy is collecting fans left and right. But then, this short-haired girl with green eyes approaches him. The moment he sees her, something clicks. He recognizes her from that vision he had earlier. She introduces herself as Sophie Powell, the class president and student representative. They shake hands, and she asks what elective he picked. He mentions swordsmanship, and she notices he only has a tiny dagger on him. So she's like, "Oh, are you trying to join the union?" Rowan is confused because he literally just wanted to study everything. He wasn't thinking about the union at all. But now he's curious, so he asks if you need swordsmanship to join. Sophie gives him this weird look like, "Bro, are you serious right now?" This makes him wonder if he just said something dumb. In the next scene, all the students show up at the training grounds where the instructor is waiting. Suddenly, everyone just bolts toward the instructor, and our boy is standing there like, "What the hell?" They yell back at him, "We're going ahead!" But that's not even the wild part. The wild part is that they're all using mana to boost their speed. Rowan's eyes light up because now he gets it. Oh, we're doing this. He activates his own mana and zooms past every single student despite starting way behind them. Even Sophie is watching this unfold, thinking, this kid is not normal. She can tell his speed is unnatural because he's making it look too easy. Meanwhile, our boy doesn't care about the race or winning. He's having the time of his life, laughing and challenging everyone to catch him. All this commotion catches the instructor's eye. He turns around and sees this tiny kid flying across the training ground, and he thinks, I need to keep an eye on this one. A few moments later, the race ends. Everyone is gasping for air, cursing whoever thought this was a good idea. Meanwhile, our boy is just chilling. They all gather for assembly, and Rowan is just happy he found people who can use mana like him. Meanwhile, Sophie is having an existential crisis, thinking, is this kid even human? The way he accelerated, the way he lapped everyone, and the fact that he's not even tired. She is convinced he might actually be a demon. Rowan notices her staring and cheerfully asks, did you enjoy the race? Sophie is internally screaming like, this little demon just dunked on all of us and has the audacity to ask if we had fun. After everyone catches their breath, the instructor finally introduces himself as Diego Sanchez, a swordsmanship master and their teacher for this class. Our boy is hyped as hell to learn from this guy. Diego tells everyone to grab a wooden sword, and you can see the pain on these kids' faces. They are still exhausted from that death race earlier. But here's the thing, Rowan is just standing there frozen. Diego is like, "Kid, move your ass." But our boy is hesitating, looking at that wooden sword like it's about to bite him. He's having PTSD flashbacks of Blake, and Diego immediately picks up on it. The instructor can see the fear in his eyes, so he drops some serious wisdom. Look, a sword can be dangerous, sure, but at the end of the day, it's just a tool. The sword doesn't have intentions, it just reveals the character of the person holding it. That's why Rowan needs to face this fear. And damn, that actually hits different for our boy. He has this massive realization, wait, if Blake had beaten my ass with a staff instead, would I be terrified of staffs right now? He figures out that swords aren't the problem, the person wielding them is. So he walks up and grabs the blade, thinking to himself that he doesn't need to become some legendary swordmaster, but he definitely shouldn't be running away from this. Diego watches him pick up the sword and immediately notices two things. The kid has natural talent in how he holds it, but he's completely lacking in willpower. The instructor announces they're doing sparring matches in pairs. Any fighting method is cool, as long as you beat your opponent. Then Diego drops the bomb. Rowan is paired up with Sophie. Both of them are like, wait, what? The other kids are already placing bets, saying Sophie is going to absolutely destroy him because she comes from a prestigious sword family and actually has real training. The teacher gives the signal, and the match begins. Sophie takes this wide stance with her sword, looking all professional and eyeing our boy down like a hawk. Rowan is standing there thinking, so this is what real swordsmanship looks like. He's genuinely impressed by how she controls her weapon. It feels completely different from the terrifying experience he had with Blake. He adjusts his own blade, wondering what good swordsmanship even means, when he naturally falls into his own stance. The second he does this, both Diego and Sophie's eyes go wide. This kid just pulled off a perfect neutral stance on his first try, like it's nothing. It's the kind of thing that should be impossible for a beginner, but here we are. Sophie is shook, but she's not about to lose, because her family's pride is on the line. She charges in with her first attack, fully committed. Rowan dodges. Sophie swings again. He dodges. She aims for his chest. He's already moving out of the way. She tries a different angle. Nope. He saw that coming too. She's getting increasingly frustrated because this boy is reading her like an open book, dodging and blocking every single move she makes. It's like he can see the future. Eventually, Sophie gets pushed backward, completely on the defensive, and she's mentally breaking down because her cautious opponent has predicted her every move. Finally, she admits defeat and asks for a rematch. Our boy smiles and agrees. After everything is done, they end up talking for a while, and Sophie is genuinely impressed by his natural talent. Turns out they fought 4 times total, and they split it 2-2. Sophie is actually excited now, thinking she finally found someone worth sparring with regularly. The other students are hyped because the next class is magic, which means they can finally sit down and rest. But Rowan is confused. He asks, "Isn't this supposed to be one of the most important classes for joining the union?" Everyone just stares at him like he grew a second head. One kid goes, "Bro, our teacher is so far above our level that it's basically impossible to learn anything from him." Rowan is like, learning magic is hard, but how bad can the teacher be? At this point, the other students realize this kid knows absolutely nothing about common knowledge. They explain that the guy teaching them basic magic is a former commander and the magic dean of the academy, the legendary Professor Arthur himself. Cut to a few moments later, and magic class is now in session. Professor Arthur walks in, and Sophie starts whispering to Rowan about how this guy used to be a legendary commander back in the day, basically the Chuck Norris of magic. Our boy is quietly analyzing the professor's mana, and realizes it's even denser than Director Lazarus's. At this point, Rowan is wondering who the hell the strongest person in the union actually is, and more importantly, if he can challenge them to an arm wrestling match. Arthur notices the new kid and introduces himself as the basic magic teacher, but he's also quick to add that most students find his class annoying as hell. But Rowan is sitting there with stars in his eyes, because he genuinely wants to become a mage and join the union. This completely makes the old professor's day. He praises our boy's spirit, but also drops a reality check. Pursuing magic means you're basically abandoning the path of swordsmanship. That's when it clicks for Rowan. That's why his classmates gave him weird looks earlier. He asks why that's the case, and Arthur tells Sophie to explain. She breaks it down. To master magic, you need to learn an insane amount of knowledge. That takes a massive toll on your body and mind. Even if you're gifted, you won't be recognized as a real mage without at least 10 years of training. Arthur confirms this, adding that it's already hard enough to become a union member after graduation. But here's the kicker, being a first-class mage isn't even good enough to become an active member. You need to reach at least second class. After hearing all this, our boy is a little disappointed. But then he just goes, "All right, bet, I'll reach third class before I graduate." Everyone's jaws hit the floor, because this kid clearly has no idea what third-class magic actually means yet. Arthur tries not to laugh as he writes on the board, explaining that swordsmanship is the Union's main focus, while magic is for pursuing knowledge and wisdom. Then, he draws this super complex formula for creating a basic fire arrow spell. But something is off about it, and our boy notices immediately, because he's seen this exact formula before, back at the ritual pit. Arthur is impressed. He explains that most students wouldn't catch the error because it looks so complicated. He notes that while a fire arrow is considered basic, the more advanced spells are exponentially harder. He demonstrates the spell, conjuring this beautiful fire arrow right in front of everyone. But Rowan notices something strange. The arrow looks unstable, like it's about to fizzle out at any second. Kind of like my motivation on a Sunday evening. Arthur explains that magic formulas need to be perfect. Even one tiny mistake after using all that mana can destroy the entire spell. Then he carefully adds one final component to the formula, and boom, the arrow suddenly becomes way larger and vastly more powerful. Everyone is mesmerized by the display, probably thinking, "Damn, that's hot." Because it literally is, it's fire. Arthur drops more knowledge. Mages have to memorize these formulas and make sure they're flawless every single time. Adjusting a spell requires insane patience and skill. For example, turning a fire arrow into a fireball uses more mana and puts extra strain on your mind and body. On top of that, magic has way more limitations compared to swordsmanship. Sophie chimes in, explaining that channeling mana directly into a weapon is usually easier and far more efficient than casting complex spells. Arthur adds that using mana is extremely draining, meaning a mage's power depends entirely on their personal mana reserves. Rowan is connecting the dots now. He understands that a mage's abilities are limited by the size of their mana pool, and if that's true, then his naturally low mana is going to be a massive problem. Still, he's thinking maybe if he studies the principles hard enough, he can find some kind of workaround, even if it seems like a long shot. Professor Arthur tests him with a question, asking what's needed to cast a spell. Rowan correctly answers that you need a formula, but then he adds that these complex formulas would be impossible for mages to remember mid-battle. That, he figures, is exactly why they developed magic circles, to represent the formula's core principles. Suddenly, Rowan has another massive epiphany. Those tattoos he saw on the shelter director's arm were actually a magic circle, and not just a midlife crisis with some questionable ink choices. Arthur confirms that some mages do engrave these circles onto their bodies to cast spells faster. If the formula is the equation, the magic circle is its symbolic representation. Then Rowan hits them with another huge question. Is chanting just the verbal conversion of the formula? Arthur is completely startled. Holy crap, this kid just figured that out on his first day. Meanwhile, some students have been here for 3 years and still can't figure out which end of the wand to point at things. Rowan explains his reasoning. The formula on the board is like a blueprint for creating a fireball. If the magic circle is a symbol, then chanting must just be the linguistic conversion of that same spell. The professor is beaming with pride now, because this is a core concept that many mages spend years studying. Arthur confirms that chanting is about saying the right words and infusing mana into each one to create an incantation. To demonstrate, he casts a powerful fireball using only his voice. He also mentions that speed, tone, and emotional state all affect the spell, making it similar to recitation. And our boy's absolutely fascinated. No recitation in his entire life has ever captivated him like this one. The professor is worried he might have scared Rowan off with all this complexity, so he asks if he still wants to pursue his ambitious goal. Our boy's response, "Hell yeah, I'm even more interested now." Arthur's pleased and decides to start the class by teaching ancient languages. He hands out books for everyone to decode, and you can see the despair on these kids' faces. By the end of class, Sophie's completely drained from all the homework. She's regretting enrolling in so many classes this semester. Meanwhile, Rowan's sitting there completely fine, unfazed, because this absolute madman filled his entire schedule with classes. No breaks, nothing. His curiosity is so intense it's actually annoying. Sophie, at this point, she mentions that his roommate is someone named Lucas, which doesn't ring any bells for Rowan. She says goodbye and heads out. Back in his dorm room, our boy's already grinding. He's trying to understand the spell based on the formula, thinking that since he doesn't have the mana reserves to use powerful magic the normal way, maybe he can create a new kind of magic better suited to his abilities. And somehow, to his complete shock, he actually succeeds in creating a functional spell. This is insane. It's an incredible accomplishment, but there's a catch. The physical toll it took on his body was brutal. The spell worked, but it knocked him out cold. When Lucas returns to their room, he finds Rowan passed out on the floor and he's just standing there like, what the hell happened here? The scene shifts, and while our boy's knocked out cold, he starts hearing a familiar voice calling to him. It's Sienna, and she's over here having a guilt trip, blaming herself and the other teachers for pushing him too hard. They all thought he was some genius prodigy who could handle anything they threw at him, but clearly they up. Finally, our boy's eyes open, and the first thing he sees is Lucas hovering over him like a concerned mother hen. This dude is relieved, like genuinely happy Rowan didn't die or something. He introduces himself properly as Lucas von Parcel and confirms he's Rowan's new roommate. And he's just thankful he didn't walk in on a corpse, because finding your roommate passed out on the floor is not how you want to start the semester. Rowan's sitting there confused as hell, like, wait, I passed out? Apparently yeah, but it's not life-threatening or anything. What he can't wrap his head around is why Lucas is acting like he's his helicopter mom right now. Turns out Lucas's dad, who just happens to be Oscar, the vice captain, specifically ordered his son to babysit Rowan's ass. And this man is really out here hoping Rowan will drop a good word about him to Daddy Dearest. Based on how chill Lucas seems, Rowan figures he's trustworthy enough. Also, can we talk about how Lucas is massive? Like, you'd swear this guy's a senior, but nope, same year as Rowan. He is 2 years older, though. And before you think he's some late bloomer who started school late, let me stop you right there. My man has failed attendance requirements twice. This absolute legend is a professional at not showing up to class. He's also allergic to studying, but we'll get to that later. Lucas asks if Rowan knocked himself out practicing magic, which is a fair assumption since their room looks like a bomb went off. Rowan confirms he was trying to cast a fireball, but everything after that is blank. Lucas, who's more of a sword guy himself, admits he's kind of disappointed Rowan isn't leaning into his obvious sword talent since he's basically following in his dad's footsteps anyway. Rowan's looking at Lucas and noticing some things. Even though the dude's 2 years older, his mana is way denser than other students, and his physical build absolutely jacked. Our boy's genuinely impressed by the work Lucas has put in and feeling a bit insecure that he's falling behind. Despite just waking up from passing out, Rowan's ready to drag himself to class like the stubborn idiot he is, but Lucas somehow talks him into skipping, getting some fresh air and grabbing food instead. Ran agrees, but can't help roasting him. This is exactly why you failed twice. You'll skip class for literally any reason. Cut to them finding a spot to eat, and Lucas is insisting Rowan needs to stuff his face to recover. But then Rowan senses this faint mana trace nearby. He's like, we have to check that out. And Lucas is down. So they head to a magic shop. Inside, Rowan notices most items are infused with mana, while Lucas is over in the corner sneezing his lungs out from all the dust, like he's allergic to the entire store. Then, the horrible realization hits Rowan. He's broke, like completely, utterly, devastatingly broke. He's out here regretting not keeping some cash from the shelter, but Lucas, proving he's a real one, offers to cover him since it's technically part of his dad's assignment anyway. This man's really earning his homie card.